There we are, Bill. I've been waiting for this. I cannot begin to tell you. I remember seeing Jane at pretty much at the last, leg, and she was always incredible, no?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's still, I'm having a hard time with it in
Mm,
terms of I'm still stuck in that denial stage that I think she's still out there. And
yeah,
she is still out there. I mean, she lives in
yeah,
all of us. She lives in all of
yeah,
our hearts. And
yeah,
so it's been a rough time. But I think at the Institute and around the world, people who know Jane are not backing off, but doubling down on
yeah.
letting and encouraging the legacy to live on forever.
Yeah.
She
Together,
inspired so many of us to do so much, and I think just in Jane's name to make Jane, both proud of us and to in her honor to keep that legacy alive. We're going to work even harder now, more
yeah,
so than ever.
like together we will, together we must.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
One little bit at a time. She said to me, it doesn't matter, little bit, little bit. It doesn't matter what it is. It's,
yeah.
you
It can
know,
be something from planting a tree in your yard to thinking about a pollinator garden rather than lawn. One flower at a time. It can be as simple as that. One seed at a time. There's a great adage that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time is right now. Um,
I'm,
and and now we know to make sure it's a native tree and should live in the area that you're in, so that it
yeah,
has the most benefits for the insects, for the birds. We're learning more and more that a tree is not just a tree, and you can do so much by just planting that native tree.
yeah,
An oak tree alone supports something like 450 moth and butterfly species. I
I
mean,
know,
isn't that extraordinary that you can have that much impact on the planet
I know.
simply by planting one oak tree? Um,
Yeah, my neighbor came and she goes, oh, she's really into nature, but this is the deal. That's why we're here together and we will continue to be, Bill,
yeah,
with your wife and the team. Not understanding is where the problem comes, or not knowing, right? So she said to me, oh, you have a wasp nest.
yeah,
I said, oh, amazing. She goes, no, they know they're very dangerous. I said, they're not. I
yeah,
said, they are predators. They eat, all kinds of insects that are not good for the environment. They're great pollinators.
yeah.
Also, they are fascinating. So I gave her the whole rundown. She goes, oh, I think you should leave him there. And I said,
Absolutely. I mean,
"Hmm,
when we can live with nature, we should be living with nature. And you know, one small thing people can do is start encouraging that nature in their own backyard by, that's a huge start. I think people don't realize that lawn is actually the biggest crop in the U.S. Our lawns. And imagine if all of us working together. You talk about that, the one ant
yeah,
story of what difference does
right,
one ant make? Doing what they do, and in an ant's lifetime, they're
yeah,
the great spreaders of seed. You talk to any botanist who's interested
yeah.
in the propagation of native plants. It's those ants who are spreading those seeds into the
I
forest,
love
into
them.
places. They're fantastic, and we as the worker ants can have a huge impact by just swapping out our backyards, our front yards into something that's not just lawn and
Yeah,
chemicals and fertilizers into a native plant habitat. Um,
yeah,
I've got both front and backyard now with my wife. 150 native plants, streams,
wow,
wetlands, and this is just in
wow.
Syracuse, New York, in a small plot, and
Yeah,
you can have
yeah.
a huge impact.
We don't need a huge amount of things, and
Yeah,
that's the deal. Just a little bit. And I love ants.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
Native American, and in how I grew up with natives, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Ants' medicine is patience. So when
Mm,
they show up,
mm,
I'm like, I need to be patient about something. Something is coming
Yeah.
along that is going to require for me to break it down in small chunks
Yeah.
and understanding that amazing, amazing message from nature because everything is telling us something. Now, tell us all your full name because I'm not that great at pronunciation. My car says I got an accent.
Ah, well, no one has an accent and everyone has an accent. It just depends on where you're from. So
I
it
don't
doesn't matter.
care. The
We're
car
all one,
care.
right? So my name's Bill Wallauer. So
The
that's the clue.
car cared, and my friend
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, you do." I said, "No, my car is German. That's probably why he thinks that." So, give us your name and what you do, what inspired you. How did you land it on this? I know a little bit about it. Wow.
Sure, sure. My name's Bill Wallauer, and I have worked for and known Jane Goodall pretty much my whole adult life. I joined the Peace Corps in 1989 and was lucky enough to land in Tanzania. And that's where, Gombe National Park is. That's where Jane started in 1960 with her, groundbreaking work with chimpanzees. And I was just lucky enough to see a lecture that Jane gave at the University of Dar es Salaam. And the Peace Corps nurse, I mean, talk about luck and fate, and how is coincidence, how is all this rolled up into one. The Peace Corps nurse was living in Jane Goodall's guest house. I
Wow.
happened to have something like 4 or 5 weeks of time, during the clearance for my position in the Peace Corps, and so I volunteered at Jane's house to do some work for her, and I
Wow.
met her through that in the late 1980s. So that was a long, long time ago. And I didn't have visions of being a wildlife cinematographer. I just knew I loved nature, and so my degree was from Oregon State in ecology, and so I could have ended up working for the Forest Service or BLM, Bureau of Land Management. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I wanted to see other cultures. My parents were fantastic, supporting me. Dad originally was a professional rodeo cowboy. He taught vocational agriculture, a great outdoorsman, knew a lot about plants and a lot about just nature in general. Mom was an English teacher, so talk about opposites attracting. So we'd be off in the mountains one weekend and at the Shakespearean Festival the next weekend. And so I got this love for culture and nature through them. And that's lived with me my entire life, having these incredible mentors. And then Jane as a mentor as well. Her messages, I mean, just about, I mean, her, every word that comes out of her mouth, you can kind of write down and take as a mantra, couldn't you?
I know. I
And
know.
so I've been so fortunate, and having gratitude towards that just kept me grounded. It's really, every day I just thank my lucky stars. It was Jane who introduced me to Kristen, my wife. Um, Kristen was working for Jane, traveling with Jane, and I met Kristen through Jane, and so I owe her so much. And so, like Jane, giving up living in Africa and going out on the road 300 days a year and working for those, people, animals, the environment, those who can't speak for themselves. She was a mentor, a humanitarian, a naturalist, a scientist, just so many things to so many people. And she's just given me so much, and so it's kind of my turn to use the filmmaking that I do, use the research videography that I've done to give back, to spread the message, Jane's message. I've seen her talk so many times I could almost give it myself, and it just was so full of information, and so full of heart and love and kindness. This is what
Mhm.
she talked about.
Mhm.
This is the way we're going to turn things around, not with anger and separate and accusing one of a. She would work with people who she didn't agree with in
Yeah.
order to have a voice at the table. So much better than tearing them down and telling them they're terrible people. She didn't believe in that, and so I'm doing my best, as is everyone at the Institute. It is such a
Yeah.
wonderful family. We're all working together to spread this extraordinary message that Jane gave us.
Yeah, my thing is, here is that little spider that I told you, the ones that jump. She's right
Mhm.
here now. She wanted to join us up. You know, I remember talking to her once, and she was going to talk to me, um, the heads of this oil company. Okay.
Yeah.
And we all know what happens there, but maybe most people don't. We do. You know how much testing they do on animals and such. And I was like, oh, wow. I just couldn't imagine me dealing with that without coming apart. And she was like, when she came out, and I said, what do you do? How do you manage that? She said, it's very important to understand them first,
Mm.
to
Mm.
understand how they function and not come in
Yeah.
their place thinking that we know better, that we are better, that we can do better. And
Yeah.
that's what she did, and she got exactly what she wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen that over and over. She's not only did she contribute to science, it used to be man, very
I know.
misogynist, man, the tool user. Humans were the tool user, and it was often women who were much better tool users than men, to be honest. And she she tore that wall down between the humans and non-human animals, but also her humanitarian. She realized as a conservationist
Mm,
that you can't protect an area without involving and benefiting local people. And it has to be top to bottom. It can't just be, oh, we're going to build you a school and then you're going to love us from now on. No, it's not going to work like that.
mm,
She worked with in a program called Takari that she developed with a amazing group of Tanzanian professionals who were specialists in healthcare and forestry and horticulture, um, clean water. She developed health volunteers in all the different villages, woodlots, so community planning. And to this day, we're working on community planning. Lillian Pintea, with his amazing GIS work that he's doing, working with Esri and some of the best scientists on the planet, doing this kind of humanitarian work at the village level, community planning. What do you need? What are the difficulties in life here? Is it firewood? Well, let's do a community plan and have wood plots rather than sneaking into national parks and cutting down trees. Is
right.
it clean water? Well, when those wood lots come back and when you do a community forest, of course the elders know that the water is going to come back.
Mm,
And so we're learning as much from them as they are from us. And what plants used to live here, and how can we help work together to create this habitat that's been destroyed because of just way too many people on much too small a land. And so this is the kind of gift that Jane has given us, this ability to look at conservation through humanitarians' eyes, realizing that you can't do this work without the support of local people. And that's absolutely true here in the US. We should have community planning at the community level, not at the politicians' level of who they can promise the next contract to, but what is best for the community at the community
mm,
level. And let the children decide, let
yeah.
everyone decide. Everyone has a voice, and that's the way Takari works. Take care
Yeah.
is what she calls it, and
It's
it's just
amazing.
amazing.
I learned something from a guy that is in Tucson, Arizona, that he came to New Mexico, to Santa Fe, and he called it growing water. And
Yeah,
yeah, and he started in Africa. It's like making these canals with all the stones and whenever redirecting waters and making all these networks underneath. And we did it in our land. And
yeah,
well, yeah, it's all that. And so we put different seeds every year, and it's just mind blowing what it does. And that's the deal, that it's not choice anymore. We're not going to be able to sustain unless we start going back to the beginnings, creating an organ, having an own food, because we don't know what the heck we're eating. Not only that, but it's like more and more, it's so many people and so much going on and so much pesticides and things that I think, Bill, that respecting the natives too, because I come from a native land and I come
Mhm.
from growing up with that.
Mm.
And I did much work with Jane Fonda in Taos, New Mexico, and all that area, because when the lands got sold, they weren't accessing water or they didn't have access to straw, which is crucial for them for their pottery and all that.
Sure.
So respecting that is so critical.
Well, the indigenous voice is absolutely essential, and Jane realized that. And her mentors were elders for the indigenous communities around the world, and she learned so much about their culture, their beliefs. And I live in upstate New York, which is the heart of Haudenosaunee land. I'm living right now on Onondaga land, and it's tragic that we have this history that we broke so many treaties, we stole this land, we intentionally inflicted war and smallpox and alcohol and abuse in the residential schools, all of this upon them, and yet they're standing strong, and it's still their voices that we need to listen to, and it's still it's the lessons and messages that have come down through the centuries
Yeah,
that we can still learn from. That it's not a commodity out there. That everything out there isn't something that we can gain from. It's
right.
something we can learn from. Something that we can respect, and something that we can continue to nurture. And it's almost as if Mother Earth is nurturing us. We aren't managing and protecting her. She's
Yeah,
managing and protecting us, and it's up to us
absolutely.
to honor that relationship.
Well, we made
That's what
that,
we can
right?
learn from indigenous voices.
We made out of nature.
Yeah, yeah,
We
and the
made out of what
instructions are
we eat.
there. The instructions are there. I mean, Oren Lyons is a guy who he'll be speaking at a local community building one weekend, and he'll be at The Hague the next, speaking,
Yeah,
testifying about indigenous rights
yeah.
to the UN. He's extraordinary people. Robin Kimmerer is another friend of mine who has written extensively on the honorable harvest.
Mm,
Extraordinary person, a friend of Jane. Both of these
yeah,
extraordinary people were friends of Jane. And she got so much out of those relationships, as do I.
yeah. It's so important for us to share this. It's
Yeah,
crucial that we continue to spread this knowledge, because what you don't know, you don't
yeah,
understand, you
yeah,
condemn, you destroy.
yeah.
But tell us a little bit about what have you learned from chimps, because they're fascinated. They're so fascinating. They just, who was your chimp?
Oh gosh, what a great question. So I've always loved animals, like
Mm,
have been around them my whole life, and
yeah,
grew up in kind of small farming communities in Oregon, very rural. Loved horses, pigs, chickens, very similar to Jane, dogs, cats.
yeah.
Um, and yet I was blind and deaf, and pretty much not using my whole senses and six senses to have relationships with non-human animals. And it wasn't until I actually saw a great ape in the wild, and that was a gorilla. This was 19 like 90, and then spent time with chimps, that those walls came tumbling down for me as well. That, but behind those eyes of these great apes are extraordinary emotional minds that are greater and equal in many ways than mine, and have capacities of love, of compassion, connection, altruism. These things that we've attributed to humans for so long, mistakenly, I may add, and that it's not just the next step was understanding it wasn't just great apes. It's not just the pinnacle. It's a circle, and it's a circle that no one's the highest, no one's the lowest. I don't believe in this kind of linear, low animals to high animals, reptilian mind. I think if we're not seeing those relationships in nature, we're not looking. And it doesn't have to be even mammalian. It can be birds as well. You see birds mourning a lost, loved one, a partner or a child. It's right through the animal kingdom. And it was chimps who tore the walls down for me and kind of introduced me, because I'm so physically similar to them. I could understand facial expressions. I could understand postures. You don't have to be a primatologist to understand these things, because you've been doing it your whole life. You've been reading mammals your whole life. And so we're all kind of primatologists at heart, because our survival depends on the way we read one another. And so it was quite natural to understand chimps in that same way, and their postures, facial expressions, vocalizations. I mean, they laugh just like we do. They belly laugh. They tickle one another. They play hide and seek. They play tug of war. Any game that you can think of that little kids do with toys in their backyard that they invent, chimps have done. They wrestle. Oh gosh, and they're just like we are. They get too rough, and mom has to intervene sometimes. They get jealous of one another. I've seen some of the most painful things that I've seen in chimps are adjusting to a new sibling. So let's say you're 4 or 5 years old, at the center of your mother's world, and everyone who's an older sibling knows this story, how difficult it was to adjust to the new brother or sister who came along 3 or 4 years later. And that's true for chimps as well. And a good mom will be able to distribute her energy and love and compassion towards all of the kids equally. And they're not all chimp moms are great. There's some who aren't such good moms who, it's just like us. They're great chimp moms like Gremlin and Fifi, who were my teachers. Very one-sided relationship, I may add. I'm just a fly on the wall with them. I don't have any kind of interaction with them ever. My job was just to document what they do. But in doing so, I learned so much about the forest, so much about foraging, so much about learning, the ways of the forest, how to look up at food and say, yes, that's going to be ripe in 2 weeks. And then, Fifi would be right back there in 2 weeks. And there's that, first to be there. She knows. Even her adult sons in times of drought or something would come and hang out with their mom because they knew that she knew where the good food was.
Of course.
So it's the elders were still respected in Indigenous
areas. I wish you can see this. The little spider decided to make a wave, and she's been swinging through our talk the whole time. She's like, okay, I'm having fun too. I realized that Jane said one time that their mother will not let them in things that she doesn't know. They tend to stick with eating foods they know.
Yeah, chimps are not very experimental. And, Jane did have a story or two about a sibling or mother taking away food that might have been dangerous to them, or, might have had some kind of toxins in them. And so, and even, she has a story of an infant who was kind of wandering curiously towards a snake, and an older sibling saved the youngster. So they have connections that don't surprise me anymore. We used to think, oh, that's just amazing. Like, no, it's not amazing. It's just that we've been blind to seeing this in nature, and just by our presence alone, because nature fears humans, because we've been this bipedal predator for millions of years. They change their behavior when they see us. And it's not until Jane habituated the chimps and the baboons that we could actually watch them together interact. And baby baboons play with baby chimps. And it's great. It's extraordinary to see these two species playing and roughhousing and having fun together. And
Oh,
I think that happens more than we ever imagine in nature. That unrelated species are interacting and exchanging, compassion and connection in ways that we
like we
never
should do,
do.
right?
Yeah,
Like we should do, no separation, right?
no separation. Yeah,
No
we have
separation.
we can
Yeah.
learn so much from our animal sisters and brothers for sure.
And how much time out of the year you and your wife are, what parts, where did you go most of the time?
So from 1992 to 97, I was pretty much on my own at Gombe, just following the chimps. Kristen
Yeah.
arrived in 97, was there until around 2005, 6, 7. We were going back and forth.
Yeah.
And then we started a big project with Disney Nature, a 3-year
Yeah.
film project called Chimpanzee that's on, it was a Disney program. But for that whole time, we were mostly in Gombe, 10, 11 months a year, and then we'd come back for a little while, and then we'd be back in the field. Now it's much more like Jane, that we've kind of left the field. We're just doing much more work with the Institute. I'm doing really, really interesting science projects, very interesting film projects with BBC. Um, we have a film called, or a series called Matriarch coming out, that is, about the female chimps of Gombe, not about all of the, grudges and aggression and violence that chimps are
Yeah.
portrayed in the media. It's much more about connections and the importance of these females through time and Jane's life. Now that she's gone, it's a wonderful kind of 60-year history of what Jane's observations have taught us through the decades. So
Yeah.
it's wonderful to get to work on these big projects, and just continuing with the Institute to share Jane's legacy in every
Yeah.
way we can, from science to conservation to humanitarian work to sanctuary work. Rebecca Tincia and her team in the Congo are managing a cutting edge science sanctuary. The,
Yeah. It's amazing.
having chimps in captivity is a science, and you have to do it as such. You have to understand chimpanzees, their needs. We have extraordinary projects going on there, and an amazing amount of success in enriching the lives of these chimps who have been torn from their mothers' bellies, and horror stories, each and every one of them, which has been turned into a wonderful success story. And
Yeah.
that's the work that we continue to do, with Jane in our hearts, but no longer physically with us.
How I know Rebecca is just mind blowing. All she have done things that nobody else even thought of doing, treating
Absolutely.
treating these chimps and doing, rehabilitating. Remember the story of the twins that they were put in this cage, all rusted, and he was basically dead.
Yeah.
And she brought him back up. And if people can donate to these causes, because the medication costs a lot of money, the care costs money and time, and bringing all these supplies to remote places is quite a bit, that we're gonna
Millions. It
link.
is
No,
very difficult to do because, I mean, the chimps eat a lot. They require veterinary care. They require facilities that will, I mean, an adult male chimp is 3, 4, 5 times my strength. I mean, imagine the facilities required to keep them. And yes, we do try to return them to more natural
yeah,
habitats, but as we get more and more of these chimps, that have been intercepted by the authorities, in the black market, in markets across Africa, that who arrive at Chimpunga, they're going to be in facilities for many years before they can be, both introduced to peers in their community, and then maybe we have an experimental project that's going on right now, and I can talk more about that later. But we also have islands that the chimps have been
yeah,
um, reintroduced to a much more wild setting. All of this costs
Mm.
a huge amount of money, as does, Gombe Stream Research Center. We're keeping the research center going, which is, the Tanzanian field staff who's there. I mean, imagine each one of those people has been with us for decades and have responsibilities of following the chimps, documenting their behavior, following the baboons, knowing each and every baboon. Every one of those women and men are extraordinary in their own right, and we pay them well, and they should be paid well. They're professionals,
Yeah.
and that costs a lot of money. We have a vet center at Gombe National Park. So all of these things, and then the conservation work, the Takari work, we lost literally millions with the fall of USAID. There's an administration axed the budget for USAID, which has not only cost human lives all over the world, but have cost nature a huge price. And so we are now struggling to keep those programs alive and keep this work that Jane started in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s alive. And it's a huge challenge. But just like the ants, like every dollar matters. And Jane was able to stretch every dollar much farther than most organizations. If you're looking for an organization to donate to or to endow, we are a great organization at making really a lot of difference in the world with not that much money when you consider, what our annual budget is.
Because I've been with you guys for 4 decades at least. And my donations go automatic, so I don't even, I'm not really all that calendar oriented myself.
Sure.
So not linear. I grew up with no calendar, no nothing.
Yeah.
So, but everything. So I just set up things that they go, my trees that I plant, all that goes out, and goes out. Something that it always strikes me, people don't realize the difference in between monkeys and apes.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
Monkey has a long tail, the ape.
Does not have a tail.
So different.
Yeah. So the great apes are different than monkeys, and the biggest physical difference is the tail. Behaviorally, there are similarity and differences. Just like if you look at the great apes, the gorillas, the orangs, the bonobos, the chimps, the humans. When you look at the difference in our behavior, orangs are kind of thought to be much more solitary. Gorillas have a single male in the community and kind of what they call a harem, for lack of a better word, but with a single male with females. Chimps are fission fusion, meaning they come together and then spread apart. Like you can be with a female chimp for 2 or 3 days, and they won't run into anybody else for all that time. So all of them are very different, and as are the monkeys. We have the old world monkeys in Africa, Asia, and the new world monkeys in the Americas. Are all different as well, but also have similarities. But the biggest physical difference is size, and then the tail are big differences.
In the Amazon, we had little ones this big.
There are also prosimians that are, they're primates as well. And prosimians are kind of nocturnal, arboreal, meaning, tree living primates. We have a great story about that at Gombe. We've been studying primates there for 65 years. But we have a new science project there that was started by the science conservation team, Lillian Pintea and the science conservation team. And they put 100 mics across Gombe National Park. And because I know the birds really well, they asked if I would kind of join in starting to identify, once the recording started coming in, identifying the birds so that we could find out who's living where. Can we find new species living in Gombe? And, we've managed to find 8 new bird species. But I was listening for nocturnal birds, and I kept coming across in the spectrogram, which is basically a visual view of what sound looks like. And so we have a human voice is kind of all over the place. Bird voices are quite lovely to see on a spectrogram. But then I was seeing this thing that went up in a crescendo, this huge kind of flowing thing that went up in a triangle. And say, what in the world is that? I've never seen this before. So I listened to their vocalization, and it was a galago we didn't know was there, a bush baby we didn't know was in Gombe National Park. So it's a new species for Gombe National Park and a range extension for this species of about 450 miles. So this science work that we're doing, we're still, finding out amazing things about Gombe from new technology. And it's just one of many success stories that we've had in Gombe National Park with new technology. It's just extraordinary. And so now my next goal is to go out and see it's Thomas's dwarf galago. I've never seen one. I've only heard them on the recordings. And now that I was able to use a template of this and match that against recordings from all over the park, and I found that their range is from north to south in the park. I found lots and lots, something like 250 of the calls throughout the park. So there's quite possibly 12 or 14 pairs of them throughout the national park. And so that's the kind of cool stuff that we're able to do with technology.
Yeah, and actually now think about it with this change in the global weather and all the other details that most people, don't want to acknowledge. I remember working with Al Gore for 13 years in The Inconvenient Truth.
Yeah.
It is an inconvenient truth because people run away from what they're scared of, they don't understand, and
Sure.
I don't really want to live in the negative, but it's a point that we got to look into it. And because these animals now they're rerouting. I have friends that they work with the hummingbirds, and I contact her. She's in south of here, and she said it's incredibly different, the birds that they're coming in, because we had a lot of fires that they have come in, and I learned because I used to hatch cockatoos, and I had birds. I had a snow owl that rehabilitated, and all that was tough because they eat meat anyway. And I was like, ooh, but how rehabilitate them and return them, and send them out. How if you want to kill a bird, they smoke them. Smoke is really dangerous to them. So it just paying attention, what's going on, where, just noticing things, right? Just being in that moment and being mindful.
Sure. I mean, was something that we started seeing with climate change, years ago, that the fruiting seasons for some of the foods look to be, and I don't know if this is a majority of the foods or just some of the foods, that the seasonality of the foods that used to be very predictable are less predictable now, and I think that's happening the world over. Also, my mentors in the forest, the Tanzanian field assistants, were saying, the rains come at much different times now. It's very difficult. You spend everything you have at the village level on seeds, and you plant them when you planted them for generations, and then all of a sudden you have a short rainy period that didn't used to ever happen, and the seeds rot in the ground. What do you do for money now? The repercussions of climate change, while they impact us here in small ways, they're impacting the rest of the world in major ways, and that will eventually catch up to us as well. We're probably the biggest perpetrator. We are the reason that climate change is happening. In the super industrialized world that doesn't tend to put nature first, is having a devastating impact on the rest of the world, and it will catch up to us. We are seeing things like insects that used to not be in the north coming up to the north. We're seeing our bird populations plummet. From 1973 to now, we've lost 50% of the birds in the Americas. Like the entire population, about 50% of those birds are gone. Now imagine what happens on an ecological scale of continental scale when you're relying on these birds to spread seeds to for the next 7 generations of seeds and forests and so forth. If we lose one of those species, two of those species, dozens of those species, it's going to have a major impact on us. And right now as we speak, Canada is burning up. Where are the distributors of the seeds going to come from to repopulate those forests? It didn't used to be the case that a forest fire was a devastating thing. That was Mother Nature, and in the process of life. And now it can be very devastating because one, the site potential is different, and two, we might not have the species required for regeneration. And so there's some really, really concerning stuff going on, and it is time that we really look at a personal level on our own behavior. I think that's one of the big keys, and that's what Jane talked about so much, that you make a difference every day. You might as well make a positive one, right? Why not make a positive difference to the people around you, to the animals around you, and the environment around you? And when I say animals, I mean all of us, human animals, non-human animals, from amoebas to everything. The soil is so full of life, and
so
we
much.
have to care for it.
Because it's a lot of birds. Because I'm fully connected, and it's funny you mentioned the other day when we were talking about it that humans following animals to forage and all that, and we have so many natives there. And I watched all the birds, and it was certain birds that I have some bird watcher guides in New Mexico, and I asked them, I said, "What is this?" Huge amount of them. He goes, "Oh, they're not supposed to be here." And well, they are, and they are by the Uha. And and they're just doing their thing, and they consume more, and they because I know what they need, the suets and things when they're gonna feed babies or lay eggs, because otherwise their shells are weak and they can get egg bound. And I've been a bird person for so long, every person, and it's so true. It's so true. And my husband is a chef, because we cater for film and TV and all that. The produce, because we go to the farmers, we empower the farmers, we buy from them. Here is so much easier than New Mexico, because we get there the drought or the snow. We don't have produce. But here, and we went to farms and all that with them this weekend, and many things didn't grow, like artichoke this year. The salaries were really not really happening. So I follow nature, so I notice more than the average person. So and I know that I can even sustain from rocks that I can put in water and drink that, and I have everything I need because I grew up like that. The rest of the people, I'm not quite sure. That's why we teach schools in New Mexico planting, that the tomatoes do come from a plant, not from a bag or a can. Our company doesn't have canned food, no plastic, 3 cups of oils, fresh herbs. The spices are all bottled by hand and put labels on. Everything that we do is 600% biodiverse, and I make sure. We can all do something.
We can, and even not everybody can go to that level, and many people in the U.S. grow up in basically food deserts in the cities. They don't have access to these things, which we do have to change. We have to invest in all of us. We can't just invest in the wealthy. This idea of 1 to 5 to 10% of people having all of the wealth in the country hasn't worked. It's destroying the planet. It's destroying all of us. We have to think compassionately about those who aren't lucky enough to be able to go to Trader Joe's and buy organic food?
Right.
How do we, work on projects and support projects that give children growing up a nutritious, healthy, diet, and choices? The same choices that you're talking about don't exist in many places. Right here in the U.S., one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and yet we have, poverty at levels and violence at levels that should not be the case if we were compassionate, if we cared, if we had gratitude and love for those around us. There's this great, the One Health, philosophy that if you're not healthy, I'm not healthy. If my neighbor's not healthy, I'm not healthy. And that's mental and physical, and their yards and their, everything around them. We rely on each other for our mental and physical well-being, and we have to start behaving that way. We have to start feeling sick when we see other people who are suffering, and we have to do something about that. And even if it's not huge, even if it's volunteering on the weekends at Sandwich Saturday here in Syracuse, or working there's an organization here that does amazing, inner city gardening. You can help. Every one of us makes a difference every day. And imagine if all of us just did one little thing every day. One little thing every day. And then that turns into 2 and 3, and pretty soon it's addictive, and pretty soon it's sweeping the world. And that's what Roots and Shoots is all about. I haven't talked much about Roots and Shoots, but keeping it going as well. The amazing, mentors and organization behind the Roots and Shoots group, this worldwide organization to encourage and enable kids to make the world a better place for people, animals, and the environment. What a mantra. What a thing to begin. It started in 1991 when I was just getting started with Jane in Tanzania with just a handful of students. And now it's worldwide.
It's worldwide. It's everywhere. I love it. And every day when we working or not, we donate food. New Mexico is the biggest hungry state in the union.
Is it really?
Across the board, the natives, forget it. When it was COVID, we will make sure to have boxes outside the schools, because most of the kids, if they're not going to school, they don't eat. It's no food.
That's not okay. That's not okay, is it?
I know it isn't okay, but we make sure, and in the shows every day, at the end of the day, they come, and we're working with Disney right now. Disney's very good at it. And because it's a lot of legalities, because they have gotten sued, people say, oh, we got sick, even the homeless, because we feel, we feed the mission here. They have said, oh, I got sick. They can eat from a trash can, but you give them cooked food and they got sick. So it's a lot of legalities, but we had approved so they can come and get it. And I make sure that it's not in tins, because I don't like the tins. A tin is worse than glass and plastic. It's a lot of mining. It's a lot of destruction. It's a lot of deforestation with tin. So I have all these different systems that they're compostable and they BPI approved, because people say recycle. Recycle has so much poison in it. You don't want recycle. You want a BPI approved compostable that is actually, we use some that they have seeds. So when they put it back in the earth, something can grow out of it.
Sure.
It's just making that notice, and how lovely it is to do your own research and say, I'm going to study a little something. I'm going to learn a little something. I'm a research bug,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What are your favorite baby? Oh gosh, I love the baby chimps, but it was this set of twins that I'm fascinated how they use the tools.
Yeah, well, it
little
dawns on me
leaves.
that I didn't even answer your question about like the chimps who like were my teachers. I mentioned Gremlin and Fifi, and you're talking about tools, and Gremlin was the ultimate ultimate tool user. She's so good, so patient, and as was Gaia. So Gaia was
Yeah, yeah.
the daughter of Gremlin, who I saw and videotaped being born. Um,
Ooh,
and so there's footage of this that
wow.
it will air for the first time ever with this matriarch series. So it's very exciting. I've never shown it anywhere other
Right.
than in a few of my talks.
Yeah.
But the whole G family. And for those of you who don't know, Jane broke tradition with science and didn't number the chimps. She said, these are individuals just like you and me. Like, how can I number a chimp? Like, you're not number 485, so neither is Fifi or Flo or David Graybeard. And so she named the chimps. And then she was wise enough to follow the lineages through the first letter of a female's name. And so Flo had Fifi, Fegan, Fabian, Fifi had Freud, Frodo, Fanny, Faustino, Flossie, Ferdinand, who I named after Ferdinand the Bull, the famous Spanish story
I
about
love Fernand.
Ferdinand was a great one. And so the G family that I'm talking about, the Gremlin, Gaia, Golden and Glitter, the twins who you were talking about, all
Yeah.
wonderful tool users. I was just sharing footage of Gremlin. So imagine dry season, you're way up in the woodlands, away from any streams, there's no water around, and you come across a hollow in a tree. And yet it's too small for your face to fit in. It's full of water. So with rainwater, this whole hollow is filled up, but you can't put your lips in there and drink. So what do? So the chimps grab a big thing of leaves, chew that up a little bit so it has a lot of surface area, and dip that as a sponge down into the hole and then drink
I
like
know.
this.
I
It's
know.
extraordinary. And like when Gremlin was doing this, all the kids were learning from her. So they gathered around, like, what's Gremlin up to? And so that next generation was learning from Gremlin through
Oh,
example. So chimps don't teach one another. They learn from example. And so this was just a beautiful case of Gremlin solving a problem to get water. She was thirsty. She was miles from a stream, and she used this sponge to collect water. It's just
isn't it
extraordinary.
extraordinary? And how amazing the message that you
Yeah.
just said. Huh? The
Mm.
message. Observe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Observe. Because if we were to observe and not go by everything, I watched that in here in LA, that I don't see it over there in New Mexico, but mothers or somebody walking a baby and a
Mm.
dog with a phone,
Yeah.
with a phone. There's no connection there. Or no rhythm. And I was watching my friend Andrew Huberman the other day, and Andrew said he's a trip. He's a scientist since he was 5 years old. So he grew up in a lab, really. And he was interviewing Cesar Milan, and he was very, very scientific. So male scientific. He,
Yeah.
I didn't believe in when Jane said, "Oh, they're spiritual beings, and the society when you crazy." Well, Human was with Milan, and he said, I never until because he fell in love with this dog, this bulldog. And he was like, dog is dog, very scientific take on the
Yeah.
dog.
Yeah.
Well, the dog is start teaching him it's a lot more to a dog than a dog that you think is a dog.
Yeah.
Fell in love with this dog. And so he went, of course, as a scientist, he bought one of the books from the
Mm.
leader of, Milan, right? And
Sure.
and there he says your behavior is very important. I rehabilitate dogs and I teach and I train humans, right? That's Milan's thing.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
long story short, Human is walking and he see Costello was the name. Costello doing something very, very involving a smell. And he changed his energy out of nowhere. And
Yeah.
Costello looked at him and he went, oh, and he went to him and he goes, can it be possible that my energy just connecting with Costello? And he kept walking with him and doing it. And he noticed that it was a synergy.
Sure, sure.
And from there on, that was it for him. That was it from him. Because he said, you know what? We can all impact the world if we ourselves are aware of what we're putting out,
Yeah, for sure.
even quietly.
Yeah. And what we put out is what we get back. It's really true. We put out love and gratitude and gratefulness.
Right.
It comes right back to us and it feeds us. It feeds our souls and spirits. And it's so important to understand that his energy is impacting those around. And, I think the farther you go, into nature, the better you're able to read that energy around you.
Right.
And to understand and to behave appropriately in this situation.
Yeah.
Because we tend to come in, fist swinging and like, oh, I'm going to take care of this problem here. Let
Right.
me do this, and I'll take it out of your hand. Like, is that what a child needs in terms of life lessons? No, you
No.
let them be the individual they are. If they ask
Right.
for help, you may give it, you may
Yeah.
challenge, but
Yeah.
read the room, people.
It's
and
amazing, right?
the whole room is, the room is the world, isn't it? It's
Connection, Bill. That's all it
connection.
takes. That being
Yeah,
mindfulness. Me growing up in the
yeah,
jungle and up in Peru was no other
sure.
way. And
Yeah,
my mother was Buddhist, so we
yeah,
not above, we not below, we all meet in the middle. She lived in Tibet doing like she was a missionary Red Cross nurse,
yeah,
assisting those children that after the Chinese took over, and killed them. But and just connect, just throw your roots down. What would you like to leave the viewers with? Because I would like to see if they can purchase some of the pictures. I'm going to put all the links for them
sure.
to donate or adopt chimps or,
Yeah.
not taking them home. I'm not saying that. Is to be
Mm,
able to rehabilitate.
yeah,
People think,
no, the,
oh, I
the
can
the
have one.
adoption program is fantastic. You can get information about one of the young orphans
Yeah.
in Chimpunga and support her or him
Mm,
with your donations.
yeah.
You can directly support Roots and Shoots and that effort. I mean, honestly, we have a program for you. No
Yeah.
matter what your interest is, no matter what you believe in,
Yes.
we have a program for you. And if you just want to do responsible shopping,
Yeah.
we have an online store that we've vetted all of the products, and we have a wonderful store that you can buy imagery. You can find things that were responsibly made by artists. So many
Yeah.
opportunities to support and donate.
Yeah.
And do something good today,
Yeah.
just by
Yeah.
your donation to keep these programs
Yeah.
going, which is much harder now that Jane's not here. I mean, we have a wonderful communications team and we're getting the
Yeah.
information out.
We are gonna still have Bill.
We're gonna
She's
keep it
here.
going. Yeah,
She's here, right
we
here.
are. Yeah, help the development. We have a wonderful development team who is still reaching out to our major donors. They're
Yeah.
dedicated. We have a wonderful board.
Yeah.
It's not just USA. We have offices in many countries around the
Yeah.
world. We have a global board and office,
Yeah.
and so each one of them are doing their work in their areas, and we're keeping this going. For lifetimes to come. This has got to live on.
And I'm gonna make sure that everybody's got all the links, all the possibilities. Some
Great,
people
great.
to take something, I just donate. I think, I have enough more than, a lot of people. So I keep it that way. But
Sure,
I cannot believe you're a dream come true, and I ran into somebody really big in the industry that he does huge stuff. And I just happened to run into him, and my husband said, "Invite him to the podcast." I said, "No, he doesn't fit in the vision."
uh-huh. Uh-huh.
No, he doesn't. It's not the vision. It's not this. It's and he's lovely. He's great. He had done incredible things, and he loves animals. That he said he will definitely see into this. But I told him, I said, I'm a millionaire.
Hmm.
I'm a millionaire
Mm.
because I have people like you that shows up that I can take with me. Millions you cannot take with you. They're not millions to me,
Yeah.
and that millionaires eat well, I'm not sure because I work with many and they don't eat that well. Because having money doesn't mean you have knowledge.
So true.
To me, you know.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, but
Absolutely.
I love you. I thank you. I'm grateful to the end of days. And we will have your wife and anybody else that you can think that can contribute, with the farmings, with the earth, with the planting, how people can do their own little contribution. Even in balconies, they can have things,
100%. 100%. They can grow
pollinate.
their own food and grow food for others. Like,
Yeah, sprouts don't even need a balcony,
it's
right?
extraordinary what you can
I
do
am
in places.
forever grateful, and we'll meet again, and I know we will. And I love
100%.
you.
100%. I can't wait. Thank you for
Love
everything you do. Bye-bye.
you. And I